Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2017 of Orlando, Florida, our 10-year anniversary live event. Our next speaker is a returning alumni speaker, a veteran at this point, especially this event where we have a lot of new speakers. This speaker first spoke in 2011 right here in this room in Orlando, Florida, and then again in 2012. He first spoke about health and the paleo diet, things along that line. The next year, philosophy. This time it's going to be a little bit something different, as you can see here. I mention this, though, because over the years we've accumulated over 100 alumni speakers. Keeping contact with all of them and ongoing relationships is doable, but difficult over time, and they keep growing. But I do keep an eye out in particular for speakers I really want to get back, and people who really fit the event as it continues evolving and as they continue growing as men and as speakers and as authors. This speaker is someone who I hadn't talked to in probably a year or two at that point when I invited him, and I'd been watching his status updates on Facebook, on Twitter, and things like that. And I knew I had to get him back at the 10-year. So without further ado, please help me welcome Richard Nikoley from Free the Animal to the stage.
Thank you, Anthony. Can everybody hear me? So yeah, and this is my third time speaking here, and my first time in shoes. I did my first two in barefoot, if you can believe that. Now, probably nobody was here in 2011. So you've seen this title screen, so let me go to, I'm Richard Nikoley. I have a blog, freetheanimal.com. Let me tell you just a teeny bit about it. So, I was an internet geek way back in the day, like, we're talking 1990. As soon as you had CompuServe, I'm talking I had a shell account on CompuServe, and Prodigy, AOL, and so on. And then I found Usenet, if anybody knows who that is, and I did news groups and did all the debates and whatnot. And eventually, I decided I'm taking too much of my time. And I started a business instead. In a past life, I was a Navy officer. I know I look it. I was a Navy officer for 8 years who lived abroad for all 8 years. Five years in Japan and 2 years in France as an exchange officer with the French Navy. Je parle français. And I lived all over the world, and there's women all over the world. So, that's kind of I like this thing. A lot of you guys are young, and, I've been married for almost 20 years now, but I did get it all out of my system in the 80s. 80s were great. Don't you think the 80s were great? Best time in the world, right? So, anyway, so I came back, but when I lived in France, I got into this kind of philosophical thing, and the French are a lot about pleasure and all of this stuff. So even though I had a job on 2 friendships during those 2 years as navigator, you have more vacation days a year than you can count, and the food is good, and so I had a lot of free time on my hands. I thought, I've never really deeply read. I had a business degree and all this technical stuff, computers, whatever. But I thought, well, I need to get in and really read. So I became very philosophical. It was like integrating philosophy with what I already had in terms of like technical know-how and the ability to fix cars and do all this shit. So I came back to the United States. I started a business. I blew my $50,000 of savings on 2 failed attempts, which I chalk up to tuition. So you have a degree in business, but you end up failing, and you just chalk it up to tuition. So the third time I had about $250 to my name, right? This is 1992, and it worked. I ended up making $250,000 my first year alone in a spare bedroom in 1992, 93, right? And that grew into a company with 30 employees doing several $1 million a year, which I sold about 4 years ago. Shut down, sold. So in the interim, I met a woman. She just retired in June. 35 years as a school teacher. So she's kind of an ideal woman for me. But so I have a distance from a lot of you guys and Anthony's format, really. But I really do get it because I've lived so much of it. So I like coming back here for the reason that that I was in a lot of your space. Like, how do I not be a doormat? And I've gone down that road, being a doormat with women, and it never goes right. When my wife tells me she loves me, which she does a lot, there's only one reply: I know. And so anyway, just kind of put it into context, so I know I don't follow the red pill and the game stuff that much, but I've been around enough to know, and I've seen enough presentations where I understand that it is not what the general public thinks. So that's my concession to you guys for my support, actually, for the people who's like, you're going to go to that misogynist thing, right? So yeah. And the fact is that this exists. The people out here, this kind of thing exists because of the love of women. And let me make a distinction. Not just females, but women, and hopefully ideal women. Just like, I remember, I gotta tell a little story. The very first time I met Anthony, we did a little kind of video interview, and I was going to be speaking at the 2011 right here, and so at the end I said, so what you're talking about is you're doing a conference for real men, and he stopped me. He says, no, it's like they're males, they're men. He's like, we're trying to teach people to be ideal men, and I got the distinction, right? Nowadays, what I use is I make a simpler distinction. I say males and men, just like there's females and women. Okay, so anyway, I have a blog, freetheanimal.com. I started that in 2003. There's 4,600 posts at this point, which if you do the math over 14 years works out to almost a post a day, right? So I'm pretty prolific, but I like to write, and it covers the gamut. In 2008, I was a options trader, which is so one of my many interests. So I was an options trader, and I started blogging about that as well, because I'd been blogging about politics, philosophy, social policy, all this stuff. And so that's how ultimately I got hooked up with Anthony. I became somewhat, relatively well-known in the paleo community and so on. I still kind of am. And then one thing led to another, and so I've been doing these conferences. But in this venue, I've always tried to do something a little bit different. Like Anthony already told you, the first thing, I lost 60 pounds doing paleo. So the health stuff and whole food and everything, it is valid, but count your calories. Okay, so let's get into it. Market making. So you already know this is kind of about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but I kind of want to introduce it like this. Bitcoin, and we'll get into the history later, but Bitcoin started in 2009. I was reading, it's funny because back in the day I was in Usenet, I was kind of like into this, I was kind of interested in all this crypto anarchy stuff. I'll show you my tattoo right there, so see, I'm real. So I'm into this crypto anarchy kind of stuff, and I'm reading white papers on digital currency. And so I'm thinking, well, that's very interesting, because if it's true cryptography, it could be something, because if it's hard crypto, nobody can break it, and if it gets out there, well, that's what's happened. But I'm going to explain that already. But it's first started. Satoshi, is it Nakamura or what? I have it written down. I can never remember, even though I lived in Japan for 5 years. So it starts in 2009, and people are like, it trades for like pennies, and that's right. But so now it gets priced in dollars. More people get into it. It gets interesting. And this is not unique to Bitcoin. It's actually human psychology. If I offer you something, I say it's a great value, but I'm going to charge you a penny for it, you're like, not worth it. It's not worth your time. It's not worth your mind space, even though you can afford the money. It's not worth your mind space. So you just dismiss it, right? Price in hundreds of dollars, maybe. It hit $5,000. One Bitcoin hit $5,000 just over a month ago now, right at the end of August. It was a buy signal, right? Because you're like, oof. And that's how human psychology works. And there it is. There's a chart. Now, the most important thing about that chart is not so much the price line, right? That's important too. What's important is the volume. These vertical bars are the volume. The highest volume day ever was just after it hit $1,000. You know what that was? Who knows what that was? What? No, that was in 2014, early 2014.
China had its thing where they can't trade it?
No. Institutional. No, no. Well, it could be I doubt it was many institutionals. I'll tell you what this bar is, and I don't know for certain, but this is like a 99% educated guess, because I've seen trade. I used to watch Trading Action I used to be a day trader in options, And so what that represents is people with dumb luck who said, holy fuck, I bought this shit for pennies I bought Bitcoin, I bought 10 Bitcoin, 20 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin for a few cents each, and I can get 1,000, and it hit, what it hit? It hurt, it hit like, I think at that point that was like $1,000. They were like, and then it started going down, of course, because people are taking their profits. So then everybody is like, ooh, it's going to crash. So everybody's taking their profits. Highest trading day ever. So anyway, the point is that it's a market now, right? So everybody said, it's such a joke. It'll never work. It'll never be anything. People made real fucking money. And every time you read one of these stupid articles from an expert, and I'm going to show you later, there's one answer. People made real fucking money. And some people who only invested grub stakes like $20, $40, $50 became Bitcoin millionaires. Because you can trade both ways. I'm gonna tell you about that. What's ideal money? Now, and this goes back to Anthony, this whole real versus ideal. I started to put real, and I'm like, nope, ideal. Okay, so I'll ask you a question. Is this money? Just by raise of hands, who thinks this is money? It's a dollar bill. Is it money? Is it money? Well, obviously it's money. Everybody should be raising there. Is it money? It's money. We use it all the time, right? Is it real money? Yes, it's real money. The third question is it ideal money? And that's where everybody's hands should go down. It's not ideal money. So what we're ultimately talking about is trade. We have to trade, right? Now, you know, people figured that out early on. It's like, hey, my chickens have eggs, I need some milk. Right? So that's a classic barter, eggs for milk. You know, you do chickens, the other guy does cows and he has milk. You know, or bread, whatever. But that's barter. So every different transaction has to be negotiated. It's like, okay, how many eggs for your milk? Da, da, da. Maybe it's different from another person and whatever. So that's really not money. That's why it's called barter. It's not money. So it's not barter. But ideal money should be a store of value. The classic one is precious metals, and the classic of that classic is gold, right? Because, now never use this word, and I'll get to this, I'll probably touch on this again. Never use the word intrinsic. There's no fucking such thing as an intrinsic value in the universe. Everything that is a value because some individual with a conscience values it. Animals don't have values, incidentally. They have instincts. They know what is a value. They know what's food. Try to get your dog to drink Seagram 7, right? Try to get them to drink a carbonated beverage. Won't do it, right? So they don't operate on, I'll try that. Maybe I'll develop a taste for it, right? No. So there's no such thing as intrinsic value. What people typically mean to say when they say that is tangible. You can hold it, right? So like if you have gold, you know, you can do it stupidly by having gold stocks, which is dumb, I think. Or you can back in the pickup, hopefully, right? Or bring your little baggie, and you get it physically, and you treat it like the value that it is. It's a value because it is desired by anyone. There's nobody who doesn't value gold, and I'm not a gold bug, incidentally. I'll get into that in terms of fiat currency. So gold is a store of value simply because it's rare, but it's also a unit of account. Well, actually, ideal money. Let's get back to ideal money is a unit of account. So there's $1. It's denominated all sorts of ways. It's $1, $100, whatever. Pennies. You can break it down to pennies. That's our lowest unit of account in U.S. dollars, right? So there's an objective unit, right? And it's a medium of exchange. So in other words, everybody agrees that a dollar is exchangeable. Like now, you may want $5 for something that someone else will take $4 for the same thing, but it's still a medium, right? So you can exchange, instead of exchanging your eggs for milk, you can go and say, well, it's $3, I'll give you $3, okay. And then that person can take that same $3 and go buy milk with the $3, right? Now here's where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, because ideal money, and this is why I should leave it out here. Should drop a couple quarters there too. That's why that is not ideal money. Resistant to debasement. But I have a whole section on that. And it's not fiat. Now, what is fiat currency? Can someone tell me what fiat currency is?
It's not backed by anything.
Well, that's true. It's not backed by anything, but that's not its essence. What? That's true, but it's not the essence. That's the right answer. It is fiat. It is in the word fiat. It's money because we say it is. This is what everybody will use. It's the law. Full faith and nobody's on gold standard or any kind of precious metal or commodity standard anymore that limits the money supply. So this is the God and country bullshit, right? And it's bullshit, right? Now you can be patriotic. I love America as an idea and an ideal, right? But I'm not a flag waver, even though I will stand for the national anthem just out of respect, you know. And plus, if I protest, I do it on my own fucking time, not my employer's. So, full faith and credit is basically like, trust us, we're the government, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. All right. So, yeah, right. Okay, so traditional and historical forms of money. We might as well cover that. You know, when you go back 1,000 BC, I think China was the first one who used like tools, like an axe. But, you know, so an axe of a certain form became money. But that was kind of hard, and trinkets. The problem is that anybody can produce an axe, but it takes work, so that's a good thing, right? As long as it takes work. You know, seashells, not so great, because someone who just goes out and maybe they find a cache of them, right? And it doesn't take much work, and boom, they're rich, right? So that's not going to work, right? And then it was replicas of tools, and then that evolved into precious metals, right? But when precious metals first began being used as money, and they were used because they're precious, they're hard to find, they have to be mined, it takes work, right? So nobody can just say, well, look what I found, I'm rich, right? So it actually takes work. And this is going to, remember that when we get to Bitcoin. It's called proof of work, and I'll explain that. So, but back then it was traded by weight. So a gram of gold, or half gram, or 1/100th of a gram, or whatever, right? So you traded it by weight, right? Now, government sees this and they're like, I got it. We are going to mint coins. Because when we mint a coin from a precious metal, it's not going to be traded by weight any longer. It's going to be traded by face value. It's a quarter. You know, presumably it's made of a precious metal. It's a penny, you know. Then, when that became cumbersome, well, there's a whole history of that, which is, I think, the next section. But when that became kind of cumbersome for people to carry around coins, and gold coins, silver coins were the typical ones, that's when the government came. And the idea of paper currency was, I believe, invented by the Chinese way back when. And that would represent, so it would be basically what's called a reserve note. You know, and you've heard of gold standards. It went out of vogue in the early 1900s, and we got off of it by the great President Richard Nixon in '72. I'm being facetious. And I'll explain why we got off the gold standard in a bit too. So, and I'm not a gold bug either. But so a paper currency basically was a reserve note. It was a certificate. It said, okay, this represents X amount of gold or silver in some vault over somewhere, right? You could redeem it, right? It's like a receipt that's tradable as currency, right? But now where everybody is in the world, so that they can steal your value more and more without you knowing, because taxes aren't enough. I mean, taxes, they get them to 30, 40, 50%. It's like, we still need to steal more. So you have the printing press, which is the modern fiat currency. And I'll tell you how that works in a bit too. So let's roll back to the whole history of currency debasement, right? Coin clipping and coin sweating were the first forms of currency debasement. So this is a Roman coin. I forget the name of it, something, right? So that's in its original kind of form, and they had different figures on them. But what you do, what the government did, is after they issue them, as they go through circulation, they clip off a little bit more and more. Remember, they trade at face value, but they're silver, right? So that, if you're going by weight, that is worth a lot more than that. That is literally inflation of the currency right there. But it's kind of hybrid because it still is backed by something. So is the gold standard is hybrid, by the way. So it's like you have this definition of fiat currency, and someone said it's not backed by anything. Yes, that's true. But still, even on a gold standard, or even if you're minting precious metal coins, it's still fiat in the sense that this trades for the same as this, because it trades by face value, right? Not by weight. Now this is actually more explicit. So someone just takes a clipping tool and clips pieces of it away, right? This is what the government used to do before they found out how to create the Federal Reserve Bank and steal your value in a way more clever way without you knowing about it, right? Okay, so coin sweating, I didn't cover. That's what, you see this? You see this in movies, in the old movies. Actually, someone has a bag of coins, right? And they're always shaking it, and they're massaging it, right? And you thought it was like, because it sounds good, right? No, that's called coin sweating. Because when you rub them together, it's like polishing rocks, right? So you rub them together, and in their bag, after they do that long enough in their bag, they're wearing off some of the metal from the coins. So that's another method of debasement. That's one more individuals do. And of course there's counterfeiting, and that applies to paper currency mostly. But I would add, who's the biggest counterfeiter? If you're talking about value, what? All governments. All governments are the biggest counterfeiters, right? If you're talking, so anyway. Monetary policy, and this is the hugest area, monetary policy that increases the money supply to inflationary levels. Now, how many people, by show of hands, think that rising prices is inflation? Rising prices of like your bread, your gas, and everything, that's inflation. Is that a cause or is that an effect? It's an effect. What really causes inflation? What? Well, yeah, but how do you increasing the supply of money? That's the answer. That's the answer, right? So in other words, the supply of money. Now, money does need to increase in supply. I mean, right? Just like you keep mining gold, right? If you just had a fixed amount of gold, it's hyper deflationary, because if that was the only money, then all gold just becomes more and more valuable because there's such a limited supply of it. So it is good to increase supply, but the supply should increase under market forces that are motivated by value decisions amongst traders, right? So, now, why do you think the federal governments of, using the word federal, that applies to America, others call it different things, I suppose, But why do you think central governments want inflation?
It's a hidden tax.
Hmm?
It's a hidden tax.
Yeah, it is, that is true. It's a hidden tax. But it's not the fundamental reason they want it.
It reduces the value of the debt.
They monetize the debt. That is also true. But I don't think it's the fundamental reason. What? Yeah, back there. So, okay, let's move along and get to it. The reason why they want to increase the money supply is to keep the economy growing. Okay, because if you're a politician in this day and age, it is death if the economy isn't growing. Now, what grows the economy? People going out and buying stuff, right? Everybody has to go out and buy stuff. So, to keep people buying stuff, you have to keep devaluing their money. So, now you see that in hyperinflation. Literally, people would, as soon as they got paid, you go out and buy because the price it takes twice as much money. In some of these countries, I think, was it Venezuela, where recently they stopped even counting money. They just weigh it, right? And literally, we've gone back to trading by weight, right? Because there's too many bills to count. So you go in there because the money, the country, now that is a situation where they are trying to monetize their debt, but it just gets ridiculous and out of scale. But if in a very controlled monetary system like the U.S., what they're really trying to do is make credit cheap, easily accessible, and we'll get into how they expand the money supply. And expanding the money supply beyond the value decisions of individuals in trade causes inflation. There's too many dollars chasing too few people. And so the cost of credit goes down. It's simple supply and demand. So each dollar is worth less. Okay, so debasement. Now there's many calculators on the internet. This is a very sophisticated one, so you can drill down. So that's why if you punch in $1,000 from 1900, it will give you a range of 24,000 to 897,000. And of course, because that, if you drill down, you start accounting for things. And my friend Jim, sitting right there, is a accounting graduate. He'll understand. So you're starting to account for things like depreciation based on dollars. You're accounting for you're talking about things nominated in dollars that are actually assets, but they're depreciated, and the dollars are inflated. So you can get to a high range if you're talking about dealing in U.S. dollars instead of gold. But basically, in terms of average purchasing power, it's going to come out to about 30K from 1,000, right? That you had then. So, how is it created? It's minted. We already covered that, coins. It's printed. Those are notes. They can be reserve notes or they can be fiat. Credit policy, interest rates. So when the Fed reduces interest rate, when they get into trouble, they start reducing interest rates. We've been at low interest rates forever. And it's interesting that the low interest rates are what created the whole 2008 bust in the first place, right? Japan. When I lived in Japan, it was like, I can remember, I showed up there in 1984 till I lived there from 84 to 89. And I read all these books about how Japan is going to take over the world. The yen is going to become the new reserve currency of the world. And it didn't happen. And they were, I don't know if they ever went negative interest rates, but they were at basically zero interest rates for a long, long time to try to induce people to borrow money to go out and buy stuff that they didn't need on credit, to keep the economy rolling. This is what politicians do all the time. So but the biggest way that you always hear the talk about interest rates. The biggest way that they create money, new money, enhance the money supply, is through the fractional reserve banking system and the money multiplier. Now, this is not totally accurate. It's kind of a metaphor. So if a bank is legally able to create new money. So, $100 gets deposited, right? So they can loan out 80, but they don't actually loan out 80 of that $100. It's just a journal entry. So, but in the end, you can get basically about $500, almost $500 out of that $100 deposit. So you have $100 of presumably, and this goes all through the economy. But you're coming out with, that's how money is created. That's how the money supply expands by low interest rates in policy, right? So that people can go and get loans and go out and spend them at restaurants and buy cars and do all this stuff, which keeps everything going. But the problem is it inflates the currency. So you're always got to get more, got to spend more, got to keep things going, right? Gold is money. Is gold an ideal money? No. It's tangible. You can hold it. It's relatively scarce. It's mined. It requires capital, labor, and technology to mine, right? It is a store of value. It's proven itself over and over again. It's a medium of exchange. There's nobody in this room I could go up to and say, hey, can we decide on I want to get that. Would you take a half gram or a gram of gold or something like that? Because there's gold shops you can go. You can actually sell it real easy. You might not get face value of what it's trading for in the market, but it's good. It's ancient and everybody recognizes it, right? This is a big point. It's resistant to manipulation or debasement. Why do you think that we don't have gold and silver coins anymore and we aren't in a gold standard? Because the government is even with reserve notes that are backed by gold, they're kind of have their hands tied behind their back because it's the law. So they can't just wild ass print money, right? So there's some certain formula depending on which country and which currency, if it's a backed currency, that they have to follow, and that's why one of the reasons that the Gold Act of 1932, where Roosevelt, after he it was before or after he put the Japanese in prison camps. I forget, but Democrat. So there was the Gold Act because the federal government couldn't expand the money supply. They needed more gold, and people were holding gold because gold is deflationary, just like Bitcoin. Gold is deflationary, just like Bitcoin. Remember that. It's unlike a fiat currency, which all fiat currencies are inflationary. Gold and Bitcoin is highly deflationary, right? We'll talk about that in a minute. So, so the government, if it's there, they can't change its essence. People love it. You go to Thailand. You ever heard of bot chains? You ever been to Thailand? A lot of people carry their main asset. They wear it around their neck. They're very simple. They're almost 24 karat gold, and they're fashioned into these chains. They're wonderful. They're beautiful. I used to have one. I sold it in 1992 when I was down to my last $250 before I got a good business going. So yeah, I already covered. They're inherently deflationary. So there you go. There's the history of gold going back to 1900. So you look here, okay, the government was on a gold standard. So gold trading with the US dollar was pretty flat, right? You get up to 1972-ish, I think it was 72 when Nixon eliminated it by fiat, I think. No, I don't think it was an act of Congress. I don't know. I didn't research that. But boom, 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 boom. And then, my God, look at that. Crazy. And that's not logarithmic. I took out all the silly logarithmic shit. So it's just a flat look at what they've done to the currency, the US dollar, as opposed to gold. And why? Because people know gold is valuable, and the government can't fuck with it. They can't, it's not like they can put in a machine and make it not gold, and they can't make something else into gold. They can't print gold, not even with a 3D printer or whatever they are now. They can't make it, right? So, and people are smarter than to be fooled like that. Wait, did I skip one here? Okay. Let me see. Make sure. Okay. All right. Now, digital money. So how do we segue from gold into digital money? Well, first of all, it takes cryptography. And I was reading white papers on theorized digital currency in like the mid 90s, 95, 96, right? There was a company called DigiCash, and I was kind of like, and so I don't really remember it, and I didn't bother to go back and research it because it's not really how it came to be, but I understood the principle that you could have cryptographic units that went through the system and had to be signed, so they couldn't be forged or anything like that. That was the important part. Discrete units, you essentially have to have a penny somewhere, which is in Bitcoin is called a Satoshi, right? I think one Satoshi is worth about $2, I think, something like that. I can't remember. What's that? The other way around. Yeah, no. Well, yes, the other way around. Like 1 penny is worth, I think 2 cents. The last time I checked, so when you say, people say, well, there's my 2 cents, I think it came out to 514 Satoshis the last time I looked. So each Bitcoin, for people who's like, I can't buy a Bitcoin. It's like, what is it, what is it now, Jolly? 4,000?
Yeah, 41.
41? Yeah. But you can trade Bitcoins in each single Bitcoin is divisible by 100 million. And they've been dubbed the Satoshis, right? Okay, so it's decentralized and distributed. I'll get to the database part in a second. It's peer-to-peer. Now, this is the beauty of it. This is the powerful, powerful thing. If I know someone's Bitcoin address anywhere in the world, I can open an app here. I can enter that. They're typically about 32 characters, although it goes from 33 to 36. And to verify, all you need to really do is look at the first 4 and the last 4. If those match, you're good. It would be, so you enter the Bitcoin address and tell how much Bitcoin you want to send. And they got it in typically about 10 minutes or so, right? Once a new block is formed in the blockchain, all right? Now, here's another important element of digital money. Limited quantity. Bitcoin is capped at 21 million coins, which will all have been mined by 2114, or is it 2141? 2114, or it's a long way off, right? But 75% of them, and I'll get into that part in a minute too. So basically what that means is that, so the mining is initially fairly easy and low cost, and it's built into the whole system. It gets harder and harder and harder as you go. So there's limited quantity. Now let's talk about blockchain. What is this? Everybody says blockchain database. I hate that. It is not a database. A database is something that's held at Amazon, it's held at eBay, it's held at Facebook and everything. And every user, so it's a client server system, and every client on the system has a certain level of permissions where they can modify a certain section originally of the database, like their account. So there's certain fields they can modify. They might have to call up to modify other ones that may take higher levels of permission and whatever. But you are modifying the original database, and it doesn't matter whether that database, whether you're modifying something that was established 10 minutes ago or whether it was established 10 years ago. It doesn't matter. It's still the original copy. So you can actually, with a database, you can actually recreate time. It's kind of like in the Soviet Union where you take a picture and you can erase somebody, right? That never happened. Never happened. Impossible with the blockchain by its architecture because it's a protocol. And so when people ask you, well, how do you value Bitcoin? I have one question. I answer the question with a question. How do you value TCP/IP? Tell me, give me a unit of TCP/IP and give me a value, which is what the whole internet runs on. Blockchain is a protocol, and what it does, it's a distributed network of computers. There's 9,200 nodes, something like that, worldwide, and they all run the software. And everybody. Remember the last election where the winner gets 51, the winner is the one who gets, some number greater than exactly 50% of the number of votes? Well, in the blockchain protocol, it's a unanimous or it doesn't happen. I have no problem with voting as long as it's unanimous. I don't vote, right? Because either I get my way or nothing, right? So I'm all for voting as long as the only things that happen are if it's unanimous, right? And that's the way the blockchain is. It's unanimous or it doesn't happen, right? So what they do is they crunch these numbers. So when you send Bitcoin, it's all cryptographic and it goes through all this bullshit, and there's these server farms and they do it, but then they have a proof of work. So everybody says, yeah, that transaction is okay. And every 10 minutes, another block gets written to the chain. But what's brilliant about it is every block that gets written relies on every other block that's ever been written since the beginning of time, and every block that will be written. So you can never fuck with it, because if you do, it destroys the whole thing. Right? Every single block. So it's uneditable. Once that block is written, it is permanent record forever, right? There's no way it would blow up the whole protocol. It would be like if TCP/IP went down, right? So it's forever done, and then it's limited, right? I already covered that. Now it's mined with proof of work. So the people who do this in 9,000 nodes, they go through and they have a proof of work aspect, which doubles in difficulty every 4 years. That's why they have to set up these massive servers. Now they do it in Iceland so they could save on air conditioning, right? They just blow cold air through the building, right? So they crunch algorithms, right? So that's how they're getting paid to do this work. And slowly, as it gets harder, transaction fees will become a part of it. They already are in some limited time. But there's ways to get around transaction costs. I'll tell you about that in a bit. Proof of work. It's imperfect. Look. So if the government, you got to think of it like the internet. You don't think of it as Bitcoin. You think of it as a protocol running alongside or on top of TCP/IP. You've got to think of it that way. So the only way the government could shut it down is if it was completely totalitarian, like North Korea. It says, well, I'm just not going to let you have a computer. We're just going to shut off the internet. Well, You might as well just drop a nuke on your own country, right? So you're not really going to get reelected. So you'd have to change the whole system. Okay. Satoshi Nakamoto, he's a guy, he wrote a white paper. He coded it originally and he released it in 2009. You know the history. Compared to gold, it has all the same properties. It's limited. It has to be mined. It can't be fucked with by government. Now, there are other coins. So there's 1,000 of them, roughly. 1,030, 31 or 2, something last time I checked. And most of them are crap. Literally, most of them are crap. Stupid people who we're going to do an ICO, IPOs, right? So they do an ICO, initial coin offering, and they go up and, friends and family invest and it goes to zero. They're crap. Or some of them are absolute either scams or they're pyramid scheme shit. So you got to be careful with that. I meant smart contracts because there's another one besides Bitcoin called Ethereum, which is more versatile in terms of what you can do with it other than just a ledger. So let me give you a quick example. You can do smart contracts that kind of serve like an escrow, right? So say you had a betting platform, right? You could build it on Ethereum, on an Ethereum platform coin, and you could make a bet with someone else, like say, let's bet on who's going to win, who's going to be the president in 2018, right? So you could say, maybe you could devise it any way you want. Like you give like 4 and he gives 4 and whatever. And, if it's a push, everybody gets their money. But then you lodge it into this contract in the blockchain, both of you, right? And then with 2018, if either of your 4 or either of his 4 hit, right, then you automatically get that money into your account. If it doesn't, it's a push, you both get your money back, that sort of thing. So you can do tons of shit with the Ethereum platform, right? So reasons to get it. In 2009, a $25,000 to $50,000 stake in Bitcoin could have bought you 5,000 coins that would have been tradable for $5 million when Bitcoin hit 1 million for the first time in late 2013. Would have been worth 25 million if you'd held it till late August when it hit 5,000. So, someone tells you it's bullshit. Well, that's the bubble right there. We already covered it, but that's a real market. There's real trading volume. Trades billions of dollars. What's the distribution? Now, keep in mind that you can, just like you can have multiple bank accounts, you can have multiple Bitcoin addresses. I have a few, most people do. But the number of addresses that have accounts worth more than $1,000 US, over 1.2 million. 10,000, 340K. 100,000, 92,000, a million, 72. 546 accounts have, 550 accounts have more than $10 million. If you're speaking purely in fiat terms, that's real money, folks, right? So it's like when people scoff at it and laugh at it, that was okay to do in 2011, even up to 2013. But I got into it in early 2014, when I bought my first Bitcoin for $618 after it hit 1,000. So that's when I got in. I should have got in earlier. Now, here's the best reason to get involved. It's 171 and counting. There's a website called 99bitcoins.com, and they have a section called the obituary files. You can search it, right? So ever since 2010, and we're talking about Forbes, Money, Magazine, all these experts, right, that have predicted since the beginning, it's gonna crash anytime now, right? the experts that people listen to. To me, that's the biggest reason to get into it. And they're scared now. Do you know the guy, that fucker who runs J.P. Morgan Chase? Yeah, Diamond. Yeah. So that fucker sits there and says it's a fraud and everything, while Chase is buying Bitcoin as it's crashing because of his words. Now, in my view, you know, if I was a law-abiding citizen, I'd say he should be prosecuted and put in prison. Since I'm an anarchist, I think some people ought to go deal with him. But I'll leave that to your imagination, right? Well, hopefully everybody just laughed at it and hold. When you see shit like that from the experts, just hold, right? So, and that's a good thing to get into, my trading philosophy. My personal trading philosophy, you should talk to Jolly over there. He's running a cryptocurrency hedge fund now that he just started up, right? And you got into it 2011, fucker, didn't you? Right? So you should talk to him. He probably knows a lot more about it than me. But for you guys, unless you're made of money, and if you're made of money, then fine, do what you want, right? You're a big boy. If you're not, how do you get into it? Small stakes. And, you know, read Nassim Taleb, Nicholas Nassim Taleb, you know, Fooled by Randomness, Black Swan, if you're not familiar with those works. But just follow his simple thing. Hey, 80% in safe stuff, and since we're still in a fiat world, the safest absolute thing you can be in is treasury notes, really, you know, absolutely safe. 80% in that, 20% in speculation, right? For the big rewards for little risk. So you can afford, maybe you can afford to lose 20% of your net worth, but maybe you hit it big, right? Small stakes, diversification. So, okay, just let me give you an example. I have one account, and then I created another one for something I'm going to tell you about a little bit. But I have most of my, at least a third to a half of every time I buy goes to Bitcoin, because that's the reserve currency, right? I don't care about the price. I don't look at the price. You know, people say it could go to 100,000, it could go to 1 million. I don't know. But I know that we're kind of moving that way, so I want to accumulate more and more of it. So but I diversify. So I have some that look good. So it's speculation. It's rational asymmetric risk taking. So asymmetric risk taking is buying a lottery ticket. Rational asymmetric risk taking is saying, is there something to this and I can hold it? It's not like, oh, the drawing is next week. That's just stupid, and the odds are ridiculous. But see, cryptocurrency making a lot of people a lot of fucking money is no longer unprecedented. It was unprecedented before the end of 2013. Well, you couldn't have made, and a lot of people made a ton of money there. The people who held made a fuck ton of money at the end of August. 5 times as much, exactly, right? So it's rational asymmetric risk taking. So I want some coins that trade for a few bucks. I want some coins that trade for maybe 100, 200 bucks that are good, like Ethereum, Litecoin. You know, Monero has been good. I'm making my best gains from Token Coin right now, just to drop some names of these things. And I have 1,000 Potcoin, and the reason that's my one silly deal is because that you can get them for like 6 cents or 9 cents. I'm getting them for like 6 and 9 cents. I have like 1,000 of them. But you know, all this legalization thing, if that goes off, and a lot of these people are unbanked because banks and credit card companies won't deal with them, who knows, right? So if it goes to $1,000, I'm a Potcoin millionaire. Okay, so a lot of people they're into these ICOs. I'll look at them. I'm like, but I just put them on a watch list. because I've seen, like, look at, I was talking to Jolly about Zcash. I mean, they did their ICO, and it went to some insane level, then crashed. Now it's stable, but so there was a huge volume, right? But it's right at the early stages. I want to see. I was looking this morning, and it was like ridiculous. You've got all these guys that are like, down or up, but there's like so little volume. You want to make sure there's trading. You want to make sure there's a market for it, right? It's an inflation hedge. Look at the Bitcoin chart. That trades against dollars. Okay, so how do you learn more? This is my little pitch at the end. I started a new deal. It's on Patreon, if you know that website. So Patreon.com, Digicash, going back to the first white paper, DIGIC. So what I do there is I create content for people. I've got a guide on there how to go to fiat to Bitcoin or altcoin and back, so you can go from dollars or whatever, Canadian or wherever you're from euros into cryptos, Bitcoin or altcoin and back, how to get back out if you want to sell them. We talk about transaction fees, because if you are buying the ones that are a few pennies, transaction fees become important, because what if it goes to $1,000 and you could have had $100,000 more if you'd avoided that transaction fee that was like $1 or $2, right? So it becomes important, transaction fees. We talk about security in terms of, like, do you leave it with exchanges? A lot of people may remember the Mt. Gox thing. I think a lot of the exchanges are people got their lesson with that bullshit, right? Wallets, software wallets, hardware wallets, right? Now you have to be careful of those. Get ones that people are used where it's open source, right? Open source code, so someone has looked at the code. You don't want to go on Google and say, oh, I'm going to get this wallet, but it has a backdoor built in. As soon as enough people have enough in there, all the money's gone. It is like cash, right? If you send your cash put it in an envelope, send it to a wrong address, you may not get it back, right? That's how it is. That's how it works, right? I talk about all the trades I do. I have a real-time portfolio that I created just for this, and I created it when I started this like 3 weeks ago with seed money, like $750 seed money, just so people that are small time that want to just get into it, do grub stakes, like $20 here, $40 here, $50 here, spread it out, can see what a portfolio looks like that does that, rather than like, oh yeah, I've been in it since 2011, like Jolly, and like, look at me, right? So no, you're going to see what it would be like if you started about now. Like, say you get into it just about now. And it's fun. I've got like Bitcoin and 8 other coins right now. I'm about to buy 2 more. Get into 2 more. But I see 30% swings over a few hours in a portfolio, not just on one coin. It's really kind of fun to watch. And if you don't have money that you're afraid to lose at stake, it can be a real fun deal. So the real fine time, and I have people comment. I got community; they can post here, and I evaluate new altcoins. Now comes time for my big pitch. $5 per month, no ads, no pop-ups, no upsells, no premium content. One price, quit anytime, access to all content. I hate bullshit. I like to do an honest deal. It started 3 weeks ago. I have like 133 patrons right now. If you want to check it out, it's all there. And so now questions.
You accept Bitcoin?
No. Well, that's the thing. It's patron. Isn't that ironic? Isn't it? Yeah. So any questions? So should we get the mic around for that? Go ahead.
So one of the things I didn't see on your Ideal Money was stability, so I I was curious about that. Like you said, Bitcoin eventually, right now it's hyperinflationary. Eventually it will be hyperdeflationary, which makes it sort of very good, better than gold at being gold, but not very stable, which I would think would be a good function of ideal currency. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
You're absolutely right. It's an excellent question. It is not stable. It's highly volatile. I mean, look at the chart, right? But it's like one of those things. I have this saying that I say, well, you can't get there from here, right? So ultimately, the idea would be that we're just trading in Bitcoin, right? It's so well adopted, right? We probably won't even call it. Well, we'll be calling it Satoshis or some shit, right? Because because it's deflationary. And I was getting short for time, so I didn't really go into deflation, right? I talked about why the governments want inflation. But see, in a deflationary environment, the government in fiat currency or in a hybrid where it's like gold-backed even, because we were gold standard during the Great Depression when we had deflation. The governments are scared shitless of that because what happens if the money supply tightens, right? It becomes deflationary because your money becomes more valuable by holding it. So you don't go out and spend it and grow the economy, invigorate the economy. That's why, right after 9/11, remember that? George Bush gets up and says, don't worry, go out and spend money, right? They didn't want people to hunker down because then you don't want to compound the problem. From a logical governmental standpoint, you don't want to compound, even beyond the politics, right? The system is what it is, right? So you don't want to compound the problem by people saying, hunkering down. So the government is deathly afraid of inflation because in a political context, they always have to show, well, the economy grew by this much, da 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 da. In other words, people got a lot more useless shit this year than they got last year, right? And so they don't really want, and I'm not really talking about going back to some agrarian content, but there is truth to the fact that we're just so fucking wasteful for a lot of bullshit reasons and a lot of keeping up with the Joneses and everything like that. And the thing is, we should have gotten over the fear of deflation a long time ago. This is fucking deflationary. Technology is inherently deflationary, right? And yet, we still got to go buy the new fucking $1,000 phone that just came out, right? Instead of saying, well, no, it's going to be twice as good in 5 years, I'm just going to wait. We don't behave like that, right? So technology in itself is very deflationary. Thank God, because if it wasn't, we'd really be up shit creek, because you can really get you really get more and more for less and less money, even as badly as the government has fucked it up. But to your question in volatility, it is just what it is, because we're in this transition phase, right? People don't really, right now, Bitcoin there are a lot of people who try to live on Bitcoin. I think it's kind of silly, personally. So I'm treating it as something to make fiat money right now, right? But I embrace the day where you can just easily trade in Bitcoin. And when you start doing that, I believe the volatility will settle out, right? So anybody else? Got to cut it? All right. Thanks, guys.